The forge has gone quiet, the bellows blow no more. The forge has gone quiet, the smiths have gone home. Only fading embers remain, and my hearth grows cold. One kiss from you to rekindle it all.
Back for Queen of Embers. We're here on episode 64, game session 64. But we're going to start first tonight because Adam and Mike are back. Unfortunately, Tim's out, but that's okay. He knows what he's going to play. We're going to spend the first part of the game session actually moving our characters into next profession.
Cool.
Yeah, advanced tier, which will be cool. And we were pretty close to that anyhow in the game, regardless. So we will. What we're going to do is this. So we talked about this a little bit last time. You're going to give yourself enough reward points to buy into your next profession, and buy one advance into it.
Ooh.
So you're able to get both your profession, your professional trait, and your one advance in it randomly. And what we're going to do from here on out until the end of Queen of Embers, at the end of every game session, you buy something.
Oh man,
That's fantastic.
that's fancy.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I
we're
love
gonna,
the game.
We're gonna reach the end of advanced tier.
We're so dead,
in
guys.
Queen
I'm
of
just
Embers.
saying. Like, he's gonna kill.
It's a setup.
It's a trap.
It is not. It is, but it isn't.
Akbar. My Akbar sense is going.
Totally is.
It's totally
Yep.
the trap. So we've been talking a little bit before we started tonight about some options kind of off camera. And I want to kind of, I don't know, maybe bring some of that to surface, bring it to bubble up during our conversation now, and just talk about like maybe what we're kind of talk about the story to date, how you think it's impacted your character, and what profession you may want to look at doing. And I think because you're newest, Jason, to the game, you've been here for 9 game sessions, probably?
Yeah,
8?
I'm already in the advanced tier. I'm that good.
Wow, yeah.
It's called power gaming.
Yeah, that's power level.
Power
I mean,
gaming, power
yeah,
level.
I applaud you, man.
Thanks. Yeah.
9 games
You
straight
took
to
you-
advance. Like,
Took you 60
Shit.
episodes to catch my level.
I'm not worthy.
I'm the best Zweihander player I've ever seen.
So Jason obviously has the least amount of
Cheat codes.
experience in the broader story, but I mean has certainly gone through, I think, a lot. You came in at a really intriguing time. One, because we just moved to figures.
Wee bit.
Yeah, and 2, we've had a lot of fate points spent. So
Wee bit.
you kind of, and we're not, and obviously the broader story is important, but not for this conversation. The conversation is really important. Is that what's happened to your character? How's that impacting Eugene? And what direction do you think it's going to take him?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this because we, like you mentioned at the end of last session, that we should start considering this. I'd actually been thinking about and looking over different professions and options and kind of weighing them compared to what's been going on with Eugene. And it's been rough for him. Like, for the most part, he's a librarian. He spends his days indoors. He learns knowledge. He never expected till when Hexenstern gave him a sword and was like, you're going to carry this as part of, my will for you to help the Dufresnes. He never expected to actually have to use it. Did a little training on it, like anybody who is given a sword should, and it was from the moment he met the Dufresnes. Even before he was aware of who they were, he was pulling the sword and fighting, and he's just gone from one in over his head fight to the next, and it's gone from this back and forth of I'm gonna use what I'm familiar with, which is my words and my talking, to I'm gonna have to fight, and then a big swing one way and a big swing the other, and trying from the moment of dealing with Inquisitor Evangeline and her fanaticism. It was a fight and then big talking and then fight and then a big talk and then an eventual kind of meeting there in the middle. And then he had a bit of downtime where they were like, well, learn some more stuff and do what you're familiar with. And you really took to that. Read a bit on the esoteric of Durendal and did a lot of reading of Rosalind Mansfield's lawyer books and her different studies on the boat, and then we end up in Stowe, and it once again goes right into try and talk people out of making what is ultimately a grandiose bad decision.
So would you say that Dufresne have kind of pushed you then in that case? It's weird, the camera is like focusing in on those hands. We're going to have to remove this. For some reason, it's zooming in that, going that way.
Hands?
It's like capturing just the bottom part of your body.
I know.
That is weird. It's looking for hands. Or just, I don't
Well,
know.
maybe it's just trying to be
Alright.
hands-on.
What about now?
So-
Nope.
Good. It will. Yeah, there
Oh,
it goes.
there it goes.
Yeah, look at that.
It's
Cool.
just giving us a hand.
I'll be
Two
watching
of them, in
you.
fact. One
It
left
says.
hand. So would you say then that the Dufresne have been kind of pushing you toward a warlike approach?
Yes, and even still, he's been trying to resist that, trying
Uh-huh.
to talk Bloodleaf down, obviously trying to talk Graf Frederick down, and realizing that words will only get you so far. So I've been looking at two professions. The first is a bit of that combination of both being a lawyer and being a bit more actiony, which was barrister,
Oh, that's a great one.
where he's trying to meet the middle of the two. And then the other half of that, the second profession I was looking at, is the just being forced to do combat he's not comfortable with, but not being incredibly good at it. And so he's trying to find a follow Tyrwin's lead here and just keeps taking orders he doesn't believe in. And that was War Dervish. And so he's just got this resolve of I should be following orders even if I don't believe in them.
Right.
And so I'm kind of torn between the two. So for Zweihander fashion in this one, I'm going to roll randomly to determine which one I get.
So let me pause there for a second. I think you should get the
Okay.
direction you want. I think you're going to roll randomly, you should.
Okay.
But I think before you do that, it's best to be informed about what's happened up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we were to ask ourselves, this is for the greater group, so Nick, Kay, Mike, and Adam, I mean, when we look at the history of this story over 63 game sessions, I mean, where do you think the challenge has been primarily? Is it combat? Is it social? Is it conspiracy? Is it chases? Is it wilderness travel? Where do you think the kind of main thrust, like mechanically, has been for us?
Navigation during wilderness travel.
I think so. The majority of what we have dealt with has been like primarily just talking. So we had the big dinner party issue and all the research and stuff that went up to that, and then everything that's been in Stowe has been a balancing act in terms of trying to negotiate with different parties to try to get an outcome that we wanted. Before that, it was investigating the plague. So, like, I feel like if you had to ask me, it would be some sort of either investigation or like social type thing, challenge. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah,
Like
but
conspiracy,
but-
social. Yeah.
there's an interesting moment where yes, you need those social skills in order to avoid some combat, but then there are going to be times in Stowe particularly, where no matter what you do, you're not going to change those minds. Like,
Right.
you can soften them to a degree, but you can't change them because, like, I think we did the best we possibly could have,
Mhm.
and they still were like, you can't sever lifetimes because it had been multiple lifetimes for
Both of them. Really.
Bloodleaf.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they still were at each other's throats.
Right. You can't just
and-
like overnight
yeah.
get rid of that kind of hatred.
Like, so there's only so much that talking can do. Just like on the flip side, there's only so much the fighting can do, because if you fight everything, it's not going to last long. Like,
So what would you say is the biggest challenge for the group?
it's, I don't know, I think that I go back and forth because, there's shortcomings from some of our professions when, like, particularly Terran, he's not built socially. And I've been able to, kind of circumvent some of it with decent role playing. But like, if Terwin may have been a better role player because he's leader, so he's bound to be talking at some point, then maybe we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into trouble. But when we do get into trouble, like the innocents or the less, no, I wouldn't say innocent, but or I wouldn't with you actually, but like the
non-combat,
the non-combat, yeah, like they tend, unless they like try and like stay down, they're that's where a lot of the challenge is.
So with that being said, I want you to think about this because we're going to come back to you. We're going to come back because I want everyone to make an informed decision. I think we should move next to Kay because you're the second newest to the group.
Yeah.
But you've been here. I mean, you've been here since episode 6, since 6th session.
Something like that.
Yeah, you've been here 50 plus sessions. So tell us about kind of how the story's impacted Elisa and Marius and like what direction you're thinking for your character.
So I've got 3 ways I'm kind of going because it's kind of where she's gone. Like I stated before, like she's kind of grown with it because she started off as like this young kid that basically got thrown into a position of power because of a last name. And so, she was schooled and she was trained and all those things, but there's only so far that can go. You have to have practical education. And so like she's kind of grown and like she started off as just this I'm not my father, like spoiled brat kind of character, and I think she's kind of changed from that to like
my dad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Trying to move out of his shadow.
Yeah. She's trying to upkeep his name, but also at the same time like wants to be herself, kind of thing is what she's doing, and like she's kind of become a fighter for like those who don't have a voice or something. Like she sees those who haven't been given opportunities, and it seems like she tries to help them out. And she's like seen how much larger organizations, if you will, tend to just fuck things up in her mind. Like watching a lot of the religious zealots just destroy people's lives and destroy people's towns and entire livelihoods and things like that because they don't care. In her eyes, at least, and she doesn't understand like the religious mission, and it started with the 13 and it's kind of just ballooned at this point, especially meeting the Inquisitor and the Crimson, what is it, Marauders? Right?
Marauders, not martyrs. I keep saying martyrs. I'm sorry. It's me. I apologize.
But yeah, so like, just watching them kind of destroy things for no care other than some god that she doesn't follow. Like, she knows they exist, but honestly, she thinks they don't give a shit about mortals in the end. So it's kind of her thought. But, so I kind of had 3 different ways that I was going to go because of the way that I've been role-playing her. And, like, one of them was courtesan to start with. And the reason I was going to go courtesan is because, like, she has... Inside of combat, I've had to rely a lot more on things outside of it, like being able to influence and turn people and, things like that, like turning the zealots back at the dock or, like, calming down the animal.
Very creative stuff.
Yeah, so I thought that might be an interesting way to go. But then there's also, she kind of has a nefarious side to her. Because of the whole, like, lock picking and taking to finally showing off that she's more than just like a bookkeeper. She actually has like some skullduggery
Kind of
skills.
conniving.
Yeah. So then Jackdaw was the other one I was looking at.
So the 2 professions are Jackdaw. What else again? I'm sorry.
And courtesan.
Courtesan. Okay.
And then my last one that I've been reading that kind of makes sense going along with the warrior for the downtrodden type that she's kind of turned into is Oathkeeper. So I'm kind of between those 3.
Well, those are all really interesting choices. But much like with Jason, I think that let's talk to everybody else and then let that inform our decision we make. So let's come back to Nick. Let's go to Mike.
Okay.
So tell us about your character up to this point, how you think it's kind of impacted him, and how you think what direction you want to go.
Yeah. So Harper, I mean, he was originally going to be kind of the combat monkey of the group, like going like heavy range, especially gunpowder. Like he was going to be the guy that if we needed to put someone down, he could do it. Right, like he would be potentially kind of the muscle. I mean, you have Terwin, who is like the big face muscle, but then you have his like right hand would be me, and I think Harper's kind of at this point had a bit of a crisis of faith, to where he's been raised to have like two kind of viewpoints, one from his father and one from his uncle, and like as a kid he would glorify his uncle's adventurous ways, like he went out and he fought battles, he fought wars, you know, he did all these kind of crazy and amazing things, whereas his like father was like this pious man who like had more faith in God or gods, and instead of like he was a paladin, but he was I can see him like Harper being like questioning like, okay, I've been doing kind of what my uncle did, I've been following that path, but is that the right path for me? Like, because it hasn't been working out, and he kind of been thinking it hasn't. Like, he's been this violent person, and what has that gotten him? Like, he had 30 shots, like, 2 weeks ago. And he put 30 bullets into people, and what has that solved? Like, nothing. And so, and part of that was also, I think, kind of me drawing on, like, the lost heart. Like, he's just kind of, like, lost heart. And so maybe it's just something, like, a phase that he snaps out of it, and he's like, all right, let's get back into this fight.
So lost heart being the drawback.
The drawback that he got from the Baroness, which, when he suffers... Like, he was just in a bad headspace last event, so that's why I was like, should that really affect like his character progression going forward? Because if I was going to continue his path as is, it would be something like Watchman, Bounty Hunter. Another one I was looking at, which I think would be interesting, was Buccaneer. Those would be the three like combat-centric professions. And if he was going to go more of a faith type thing and give up fighting, I think he would go adherent.
That's interesting.
And
Those
be
are
like,
all really interesting ones.
kind of like follow his father's path and like, no, I'm not going to attack you. If you want to attack me, you can, but I'm not going to fight back.
That's interesting.
So take the path of non-violence
Yeah.
instead of the path of violence.
Interesting. That's a really intriguing twist. I didn't expect that.
Yeah,
But it makes sense.
it
right?
does. Like I was thinking about it. I was like, I know I'm not going to be here next or this Wednesday, and I was like, let me just type something out. Like, what's Harper thinking? And I was like, that's an interesting thought. Like this dual like fork in the road, violence, non-violence. Which way does he go?
Okay.
I think adherent would be a great non-violence thing. I don't know if you want me to do magic. I'm fine with not doing that, because they do get incantation. They do get Blessed Sacrament. They would get 3 spells. But again, I mean, if you just want to do like just professional trait, I'd be fine with that. Like,
yeah, I think it's an interesting play. We're going to move it to somebody else, but I want you to consider this. Think instead about apostle. Okay. And we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So let's go next to Adam. Let's talk about Terwin Forrester. Tell us about how the story is where he started, how the story's kind of impacted him, and what direction you think you want to go.
When the story started out, he was all about like justice and doing the right thing, and making sure that those old, outdated notions of chivalry are still followed. I mean, like even to this day, he still has outdated things because his family is far removed, and so like when he was talking to Graf, he said, "You're men," and then Graf was like, "My people," or my men and women, or something like that, because his family is still in those like older traditions.
Right.
And with that comes a certain naivety as well. And so, after a while, it started moving into, okay, well, we're going to try to avoid violence, but violence is going to happen. I've been through it before. I'm all about protecting people, and I'm about putting myself in front of them. But now, with everything that happened, he tried everything that he could to stop that violence, and it still happened. I think that, like, he's having a moment that Harper is having, but I think he's going to lean a little bit more into hatred. And so how that plays out, whether it's like he's trying to continue to hold on and desperately make sure that if anyone in the group dies, it's him, or if he actually starts to go a little more malicious, I don't know. And it depends on which profession I pick. So the professions I have narrowed down, pit fighter would be to try and like go that route of like I'm harder and harder to kill. That's the one that makes least sense roleplay wise, but it's on the table. The other two are from Mongosh, and that's Armiger, because he's obsessed with armor, and some of the people have told him that. So he could go Armiger, or if he really wants to go down the path of hatred, he could go Condottiere. So those are the three that I'm stuck between. I briefly looked at Executioner, just because of like he has been known to just straight up kill people, but it's not really. It's another possibility, but I think that's not so much. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's good. So that brings us now finally to Nick. Nick, tell us about Warren Rhodes, or Warren ? Let's talk about what. Before we dive into, I think it's gonna be important for us to talk about the event, like the first touch with her.
Okay. I think it does pay to like actually go into a little bit of background before we get to that. So Warren, I like my concept for Warren at the outset was someone who is very opposed to the types of character I typically play, which are kind of boom 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 chaotic from the start. I wanted to go with something different and like play a really upfront, honest person who had a very strong sense of morality. I picked Candor is his order alignment. So he always tells the truth. He gets everything right, and he's a camp follower. He's dedicated. That's his profession, is helping people. And then throughout his career, the world continues to shape him further and further down the path of chaos. So in the first few acts of the storyline, we encountered the Reek. His kind of reaction was to take up the plague doctor profession. So he's been going down that profession for a while, and so at that point, somewhere about midway in there is when he actually came in contact with Warren. And we can kind of go into what you were talking about in just a few minutes.
Yeah, so, and I'll let you talk about it, but what we're really talking about, if we're just really kind of not above board, but we already know that Warren has a disorder called possessed. There is someone else inside of him. This has been kind of a source of debate and discussion, and now she's kind of like naked in her appearance, like naked in the sense that she doesn't need to hide behind Warren now. She literally takes control. He stands upright. He speaks differently. When she is in control, he is different. And we spoke kind of briefly before everyone kind of came back about how that may shape the next profession. So what are you thinking?
So, I was thinking a lot of different ways to take this character. I initially thought, hey, I can continue down this path of, like the plague doctor and move into another healing type profession, like a physiker or something like that. I kind of threw that idea out because, frankly, it didn't really sound that interesting. And then Dan and I were kind of talking, and we kind of had the concept that Warren, ? Would take a new profession rather than
her.
Her. She would be taking a new profession rather than Warren. So with that in mind, we kind of bounced a few different ideas off, and part of this decision centered on the fact that Warren ? Is the nature of who she is dictates that Warren take on a new order alignment or aspect. So with that in mind, I chose to take the... What's the name of that again? Sanguine Legionnaire. Yes.
And what's your aspect?
So the aspect I decided on was Wrathful, I believe is the name of it.
Yeah. Cool.
And let me actually, since we've got it here, I will
So
go ahead
you're
and read that
fixed on
off to
that one?
everyone, since that is not generally noted knowledge because it's kind of new. Wrathful. There's always a seething ire, like a persistent fever that gnaws at the hell furnace's very being. Perhaps he is anger. It is anger at his imprisonment deep below the earth, or his hatred of those who walk on the land. Either way, he and his occultists are outwardly stern and indignant, but inwardly boiling and seething with fury. The inner natures may manifest as subtle barbs in conversation or stares hard to freeze you to the spot, and it may boil over into bloody outbursts of ultra violence.
So there's two things I need to call out about this that you're not going to see in the book. One, the Sanguine Legionnaire, it worships the Prince of Violence, but we're making some changes.
Mm-hmm.
Two, the Hell Furnace in this from this perspective in the aspect is actually her, who has no name, because this is, once again, her taking this profession and not Warren taking the profession.
Right.
So one of the things we talked about was, when does Nick, the player, take advantage of the benefits of the Sanguine Legionnaire?
Only when Warren, ? Is in control.
So Nick as Warren Rhodes will not take advantage of those benefits. But when she is in control, then she can take advantage of the profession's abilities.
So she's going to change Warren's order and chaos alignment?
No. He
It's
loses.
hers.
He loses his order alignment and replaces it with an aspect. So we talked about what Nick is looking to move towards. So with all those considerations in mind, like everybody's doing, I think we should wrap up our pre-episode, our pre-7th act, by making a decision. What character profession are you going to go through? We know, Nick, you're going to choose...
Sanguine Legionnaire.
Okay.
We were going to talk about disorders, too.
Yeah, we need to. Let's come back to that once we get a decision on everybody's profession. So, okay.
I'm gonna go Oathkeeper.
Oathkeeper? That's good. What about yourself, Adam?
I'm not sure.
We'll come back then.
Yeah.
I kind of really want to do like adherent, but I could be convinced on something else.
Well, adherent to be a good fit. The only thing you would do is just replace incantation.
I mean, you have to have a level of incantation in order to cast a spell, and I just would do it last, or maybe not at all.
Yeah,
That's
it's once again, you can leave
It's
that door open, but don't do it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of, you leave that option open, obviously, for incantations, kind of.
Okay.
Because you never know, right? You never know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the only question I'd have is, do any of the player characters think that it would be too much of a turn for the character to be like, I'm done with violence?
No.
You know?
No.
Because if it feels too wrong, then I would be like, okay, then I'll just continue on the path as is.
And it may be a slip. Like, it may be a slope down to that idea of, like, moving away from violence or using violence when it's absolutely positively necessary.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, and that's why I was thinking martyr, actually. These
what?
guys,
I'm sorry?
following the martyr.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like these guys are like a bastardized version of the martyr, and I feel like this is not right. I need to do right.
Well, we
Buddy,
say
if I
the
got an idol
guys,
for
but you're
you.
talking about the Crimson Martyrs?
Crimson Marauders.
Well, I'll tell you now, they have no impact on the story in the future. That's done.
Right.
That opportunity is gone.
But I feel like I'm not going to try to change them.
Right.
But they changed me.
Yeah, that's it. Kind of like an event that kind of like became like the.
This was the catalyst, like the thing that kind of like broke Harper and went like, no, this is the wrong path. This is the right path. And it was them bastardizing the martyr, in my opinion. That was just like, no, because I mean, I would probably say that if his main god would probably been the steward, which is like her husband, which is the god of war, right, essentially. And so I think he's been like, no, I've been following the wrong aspect. Like, it's really her that I need to follow.
It's good. Cool. That's good. It's a good choice. So yeah, so we'll obviously build characters in just a few moments off camera, but let's go back. So Oathkeeper is what Kay's going to go for Elisa Marius. Adherent is what Harper Claviger is going to go for. And then for Warren Rhodes, you're going to go for Sanguine Legionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, that is how Graph Red Room is built. So now we turn to Jason. So Eugene Thornberry, you had kind of two choices.
Two choices. And again, I really like both, and I can see Eugene going either one.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of figure out how I want to advance with him, I'm going to kind of stick it towards kind of core Zweihander. I'm going to leave it up to a bit of chaos.
Cool.
All right.
So 0 to 50, Barrister, 51 to 100, Dervish. 77, crit success on Dervish.
Dervish.
All right, so that brings us finally back to Adam.
Actually, I have made a decision,
Oh,
and my decision is going to be Condottiere.
Nice. That's a cool one.
it is.
It's what makes the most sense after like overviewing everything they did. Like, I think also particularly what I could see happening, because like you don't like you're not, except for maybe in some cases, you're not all of a sudden just like the embodiment of what your new profession is. You roll into it.
Right.
I think with everything that's happening, when he starts to realize, oh shit, I've been doing this to Eugene. I've lost one of my heaviest hitters, and then I have no idea what to do about Warren. He's probably going to snap. And
Pressure's on.
yeah, pressure's on. And so Condottiere shows more of that, like,
Keep talking. You're fine.
you're pointing. Yeah, the Condottiere shows a little bit more of that side, because the drawback is that I'm going to have to change my order alignment to ferocity and my chaos alignment to hatred.
Cool. Okay. So we'll do a quick last tally on professions. So Eugene Thornberry, what are your 3 total professions?
Archivist, Bailiff, War Dervish.
Okay. Warren Rhodes,
Camp Follower, Plague Doctor, Sanguine Legionnaire.
Elisa Marius,
Provocateur, Investigator, and then Oathkeeper. Breaker.
Harper Claviger.
That wasn't
Dragoon, Pistolier, and then hard left on a tier.
Excellent.
I was
And
writing
then finally
things.
for Chairman Forrester.
Man at Arms, Sellsword, Condottiere.
Perfect.
Nice.
So we will wrap up our character creation stuff here. We'll do Tim's off screen, and we'll announce what it is on our 65th session when he's back.